What is going on with Franco Colapinto? I think many of us expected better from the Argentinian driver. Even if you had low expectations for him, you didn't expect it to be this bad, right? After another poor weekend, another crash at Silverstone, he didn't even start the race, bearing in mind, and, well, Alpine have come out and stated that it was a driver line issue. Rumour has it up and down the paddock, and the word on the grapevine is that he burned another clutch, which is why the race, he wasn't even able to start the race, and he was starting from the pit lane anyway, due to, of course, that crash in Q1 on the Saturday. So that's a rookie mistake. That's a big... I mean, doing it once, which supposedly he has done previously, I'm not sure what session or what race weekend it was, but supposedly he'd already done it once previously, and this is the second time he's done it. And, well, this arguably was potentially going to be his last race weekend anyway. Flavio Briatore did initially announce that he was only going to have 5 race weekends, and he got given an extra one with Silverstone, with it probably being because of the double header with Austria and the British Grand Prix. Then a nice 2-week gap now before we head to Spa. So that was an opportunity for him. An opportunity for him to take advantage of an extra race weekend to showcase something. To showcase that, yes, I am making steps forward with this car. If you give me the time towards the end of the season, I will be up to speed, and, yeah, we can get something out of this, and I'm your man heading into 2026. However, he's done nothing of the sort, and I think... while obviously there's many Jack Doohan fans out there, and many thought that, of course, he was removed from that seat too early and he was never given a chance from the get-go, because as soon as Jack Doohan was... well, not long after Jack Doohan was announced as the driver for Alpine for next season, they announced they'd signed Franco Colapinto for 5 years. You don't sign someone like Franco Colapinto with the money that he has behind him. Not necessarily the driver, because he'd only had a short spell, of course, in the second half of 2024, but the fact that he has the financial backing, which is well documented. You're not going to sign someone like him and put him on the sidelines for 5 years and bring in all those sponsors. They are not going to be happy. And we know Flavio Briatore and F1 in particular, they love the money. They love the money. And yes, that is why Franco eventually got put in. And, well, Jack Doohan didn't exactly make an impact, did he? The only impact he pretty much made was the one into the barriers on lap 1 at Australia, and a heavy impact into the first corner at Suzuka after deciding to not close his DRS after trying something out that he did in the sim, which was a ridiculous risk to take, considering the amount of pressure you're under to perform anyway, and you know your time is potentially very limited in an F1 car. But both of those drivers have not done a good enough job. There is only one car on the grid that has yet to score points, and that is the Alpine of Jack Doohan and Franco Colapinto, that side of the garage. I mean, that's poor. That is poor, because Pierre Gasly, while Pierre Gasly is performing very well, he is overperforming in that car. There's kind of the situation at the moment akin to what Red Bull have got. They've got a very good driver in that main seat who is outperforming the car, and then the second seat is pretty much showcasing how poor that car actually is. Pierre Gasly has kind of no right to bring that Alpine into Q3 as often as he does, and he has got some decent points out of it, even though they are still last in the constructor standings. The fact they've got points anyway is all because of Pierre Gasly. So very similar kind of scenario to what Red Bull are going through as to what they've got at Alpine, except Alpine is probably a team that's in more disarray than what Red Bull is. I mean, yeah, I don't even need to go into the detail of what has been well documented about Alpine, and of course Flavio Briatore being back at the helm and pretty much being the de facto team principal says it all, doesn't it? Absolutely says it all about the running of that team. And at the moment, Franco Colapinto, we expected better of him, and he has done terribly in that car. There's no other way to say it. I like Franco Colapinto. I think he's a breath of fresh air. However, he has done no better than Jack Doohan. He's done just as bad. I don't think Doohan did better, but I don't think Colapinto has done worse than Doohan. It's just not been good enough. And, well, Colapinto, why is that? Why has he done so poorly? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons, and I think as always, it's a little bit more convoluted than what people think. I think there's valid reasons as to why he has performed poorly, but ultimately there are still things that he could have done so much better. So the first one, as to why has he done so poorly this season? Well, I think his preparation has been poor. He only got one test in an Alpine at Monza, as far as I'm aware. Maybe he did more, but tests now can't really go unnoticed because they're always at obviously popular racetracks and there's social media everywhere. He did a test in an old Alpine, some running in a previous version of an Alpine in Monza before his eventual first race weekend at Imola. How impactful that was for him, running a Renault engine for the first time, a Renault gearbox for the first time, I don't know, but it's most definitely not as much running as what Jack Doohan would have had in an Alpine in the pre-season testing that we saw with the amount of laps they was able to get in there. So he's had that, and then jumped straight into his first competitive session for 6 months. That's a long time to be out of F1. That is a long time. Even with that testing at Monza, to then jump into your first official session like that, you know there's a lot of pressure on you anyway. No matter what team you're in, there's going to be pressure, but even more so considering the circumstances of, I've only got 5 races to prove myself. I mean, just ridiculous in the initial outset from the get-go, just like it was for Jack Doohan on the flip side. And the second one, as I mentioned already, that Renault gearbox and Renault engine that he had to get used to. The last time he drove an F1 car, which was 6 months ago, was the Williams, which is a Mercedes gearbox, a Mercedes power unit. And we've seen from more experienced drivers than him, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, struggle with that transition, swapping power units and gearboxes. It's taken them a considerable amount of time to get up to speed. I mean, arguably you could say they're still not up to speed because they're not performing to the levels that we know they can perform at. So that, combined with everything and the pressure of only 5 races, it is just, I cut him some slack, really, in that regard, and in relation to him not performing as well as what many would have expected. However, while you may have had low expectations for him, as I did, it is still inexcusable to have the crashes that he has had. There were concerns about Franco Colapinto last season, that he's quick, but he's crashy. He overdrives the car. There's quite a lot of hallmarks and similarities, I believe, to Charles Leclerc. However, Charles, we know, is able to win races and dig out the very good performances. But Franco Colapinto last year overdrove that Williams in a couple of instances where he had big crashes. Supposedly, he was on Red Bull's radar for being in that second seat, or at least brought into the V-Carb team, until he had that crash at Vegas, which was a very expensive crash for Williams. And it was pure overdriving and misjudgment from him, crashing into the barrier where he did, just misjudging the car width. Very rookie mistake. And because of the nature of the crash, Red Bull removed their interest. Otherwise, we could have had him in the second Red Bull seat rather than Liam Lawson or Yuki Tsunoda now. How quickly things change in F1, hey? But when you come into this situation at Alpine, and we say this, I've said this about any rookie, the one thing that you need to do, if you are in a position where you're in a team that isn't going to be very competitive, the one thing you have to do as a rookie is keep it out of the goddamn barriers. Keep the thing on track, eh? Keep the thing on track. And what did Colapinto do in his first qualifying session back in F1? Put it in the barriers. I mean, dude, come on. Come on. I mean, just don't do it. Keep it, even if you're a bit slow. You can build yourself into the pace once you get used to the car, once you get to, like, the whole rigmarole again of an F1 weekend. But don't try and overdrive the car, which he did into turn 1, and he crashed. Unbelievable. I mean, it's just, that would not have been a very, very good start to his career. And then, of course, he ended his Alpine career. Then he went to Monaco. Very difficult to try and get into the flow again and build up confidence after you've just crashed in qualifying and you're heading to the tightest racetrack on the calendar. Qualified dead last with some decent strategy from Alpine. Of course, we saw the backing up of drivers and so forth. He was able to finish 13th in the end. But, like, qualifying suffered because of what happened at Imola. Spain, qualified towards the back again. Canada was his best performance and finished P13, so well done there, but you're already into your fourth race of 5. You haven't exactly done very well. And then Silverstone crashed again in the last goddamn corner. I mean, you're just like, oh, and the thing is that Gasly has shown that, yes, there is, while that car, of course, maybe has a narrow window similar to how that Red Bull is, there is chances of that there are race circuits where there is a result in that Alpine. And even though he has all of this backing from the commercial partners, is it truly enough to convince Flavio Briatore to keep him? Maybe they might have to throw a few more million at him to keep him in that seat for the rest of the year. I don't think changing drivers willy-nilly is going to help, but Colapinto hasn't exactly done any better than Jack Doohan, where there were already concerns from the engineers, from the team themselves, outside of Briatore, that bringing Colapinto in was the right decision. They thought consistency and building up the confidence of Jack Doohan and the relationship they had with him was more beneficial than replacing him with Colapinto. And at the moment, you have to say that their concerns have been proven. But overall, I do feel sad for Colapinto because I do rate him. I do think he has potential. I think his performances with Williams last year showcased the sort of driver he can be. He does just need some better management behind him. He needs someone to just tell him to just dial it back a little bit, look at the bigger picture, I feel like, whereas he's going out there and just trying to be quick all the time, and that's not what you necessarily need. And especially in this season as well, he only needed to go in this season and just do an okay job, you know. He just needed to go in and do better than doing. He didn't have to go in there and try and beat his more experienced teammate. I think he needed to just go in there and just showcase, look, we need to go in there. His management should have said to him and gone, we need you to just go in there and just build up your pace. You don't know what Flavio Briatore has said, but just go in there and just showcase that you're a driver who can be relied upon. You're a driver who should be kept in that seat to the end of the season. You're getting closer and closer to your teammates as the races go on, and there is potential for you to grow there and to develop and be a car built around into the new set of regs as a partner with Pierre Gasly. But on the flip side, he's now made Jack Doohan, as I mentioned, who didn't exactly have a good impact anyway, make question whether or not they should have kept Jack Doohan. I mean, that's the worst case scenario for him. And he had a low bar anyway, in my personal opinion, of what he had to come in and achieve. And it's a real shame because we could be losing a good character from the grid. But sometimes that's what happens with F1. He's still got that long-term contract, but we know things move very fast in F1. And if you do get a reputation early on, it can stick. It can stick in F1, especially in the age of social media as well. So he has a very passionate fan base. He has very influential backers and backing, so he may remain in that Alpine seat for Spa. Supposedly Bottas is rumoured to come in. I mean, will Bottas do a better job because he's more experienced? Yeah, potentially, but there's no guarantee. He's also not driven a Renault engine and a Renault gearbox before. I mean, he's not exactly going to be... I mean, yes, he might be more adaptable and maybe a safer pair of hands, but I can't imagine he's going to go in there and hit the ground running either. I could be pleasantly surprised and proven wrong, but I think what Bottas would do compared to Doohan and also Colapinto is that he'd probably keep it out the wall. He's quite a reliable driver in that regard, and maybe that's just what Alpine want at the moment. They just want to stop seeing their car in the wall every other weekend, because Gasly's not doing that. Colapinto and Jack Doohan have done, and yeah, it doesn't look good on them, especially when they are trying to sell the team. Doesn't look good on them when they have one car constantly failing. So there is also that element of why maybe Colapinto may be switched out, because they are looking for buyers. The high-tech deal supposedly fell through because of Ollie Oakes leaving and the shenanigans, alleged shenanigans that are happening behind the scenes there, hence why he stepped down with his brother, etc. That was supposedly the deal that was happening in the background. Whether that is still happening or not, I don't know, but I imagine they are still looking for buyers. They have multiple shareholders now. You want to make your team attractive to buyers. The worst way to make your team attractive to buyers is to have one car consistently crashing. Because while of course Pierre Gasly is able at the moment and maybe just slightly bridging that gap and being able to be used as a selling point to investors, but look, this is what we can do with a dependable driver. Well, they may go, well, yeah, but why haven't you got a second dependable driver? And then maybe that's why, yeah, the Valtteri Bottas approach is going to be explored. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you upset about Franco Colapinto's performances? Are you upset that he may be removed? Are you upset that Jack Doohan was removed in the first place? I mean, I did see a comment somewhere that maybe Doohan might be put back in the car, but I don't think that's the right decision either. I don't think, while obviously Doohan didn't really get that much of an opportunity, he also crashed multiple times in the first six races that he had. So yeah, both of them have done poorly, and that's why they're probably going to go down the experience route now of Bottas. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm sad for both of them, Jack Doohan and Franco Colapinto, because we want fresh blood on the grid. We want fresh blood to be on the grid. Some of the rookies have done brilliant this season, some not so much. But we want to see rookies on the grid. We want fresh blood to come in and be successful so that we have those exciting drivers on the grid. And when Franco Colapinto does perform well, he is an exciting driver, but it just hasn't been in Alpine. And, well, will it be the last we see of him in F1? Yeah, with a lot of fresh talent coming through the pack at the moment in F2 and so forth, it very well could be, which would be a very big shame.